Okay, so welcome to this morning's Leadership Lounge. This morning's session is Unlocking Potential. So today's session is all around kind of having that role now as line managers, but where you need to coach people and bring out the best in what they do. So we've looked over this month at things like personalities in a team. We've looked at how to go through change processes and how to manage that change. And then last week we were joined by Chris, who hosted an excellent session on self-awareness and how we can do that as leaders and bring that out in our people. The next piece then is more developmental. So it's looking at, right, we've got a team of people that are good, but we need to take them to great now. And how do we start to unlock that potential and drive them forward as leaders? And then next week, we'll go through leading with EQ, not IQ. So it all talks about emotional intelligence and what we know about that and how we can effectively use that as leaders. We're joined today by Ashley, Tom and Laura, all of them from our Hull office. Ashley is our sales support manager and Tom and Laura work on our customer service team up in Hull, and they do this quite frequently with all of their team members. So they're going to share some insights with us today about how they've done it and what's worked and what hasn't. So on that note, I'm just going to stop sharing. I'm going to ask each of them to come onto camera and introduce themselves. So let's start with you, Ashley. Can you just introduce yourself for me?
Hi everyone, so I'm Ashley, so I've been with Payment Sense for 4 years now, so I'm currently sales support manager, but I do manage the Connect team as well, so I'm responsible for 20 people in total, so I have 2 direct reports who each have 9 agents each. That's me.
Brilliant, thank you Ashley. And Tom, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, my name's Tom Atkinson. I've been with Payment Sense now for around 4 years and 3 months. Initially started as just a customer service agent. Did that for about 9 months and then went into more of a coaching role, ironically for this call. After that, I then became a customer service team manager, and I've also managed the Connect team as well in the past. Previously, I've done sales, telesales and retail, and that's it from me.
Brilliant, thank you Tom. And just over to Laura finally.
Hi all, so I'm Laura Prince. I've been with the business for 4.5 years now, and I started out as an agent for 6 to 9 months, and then went into customer service team manager role. Throughout that time, done lots of coaching with lots of different types of personalities and lots of different types of teams as well. So yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura, and thanks to Ashley and Tom as well. We're going to hear from them in a moment, but we're going to just carry on with a bit of context setting for this session. So today's session, like I said, is about unlocking potential. It's looking at the coaching aspect, and the whole series is aimed at leadership styles, and it's aimed at how to kind of work on your development as a leader and share insights and best practices and ways that we can be better in our role and to help our people in the business. So there's 2 types of leadership influence that we need to be considerate of. And you've probably recognized these, whether in yourself or whether from managers that have managed you in the past. But you normally fall into one of 2 categories. You're either the type of leader who's very much about the control. So it's very, what they refer to as industrial. So it's very much about making every decision, micromanaging, very much about telling people what and how to do it, top-down approach as well. So it starts at the top, and the boss is kind of the center of everything that we do and the center of the way that we think. And then on the flip side, and kind of in the complete reverse, you have the knowledge manager, who's all about releasing control and releasing potential, empowering people to do better at what they do. So modeling kind of this high trust culture. There's a very popular term now that keeps coming up. It's a bit of a buzzword, but it's servant leadership. And what we mean by that is servant leadership isn't about telling people what to do. It's about coaching them to be better at what they do. And I suppose that's kind of the whole topic of what we're looking at today. It's about empowering people to make their own decisions and to be able to recognize when something works and when something doesn't work. It's about empowering them to give their feedback, encourage them to be in the decision-making process as well, run ideas past them, see what they think, what would they come up with. And by doing that, you start to unleash their talents. You start to really be able to kind of take them from that good to great. And that's what you're really looking to do. So they're the two types that we've seen. I just want to see, how would people kind of self-identify? If you want to pop it into the chat box, where do you think you sit? Do you think you sit in one bucket or the other, or do you think you're kind of in between? If you just want to pop it into the chat box for me and let me know. I'll be completely honest, I fall into both. I want to be more on the knowledge one, but sometimes I can go onto the control side of things, and I want to kind of be on top of everything and tell people what to do and how to do it. But then I have to talk to myself and kind of reflect and say, actually, I need to be on that knowledge side. So just share with me, if you don't mind, just in the chat box, where do you think you fall as a leader? If you were to look at yourself today, or your people in your team were to say where they are, where do you think they'd actually place themselves? Don't be shy, guys. You'd be a share of both. Yeah, Sandra, I agree with that. Alex, yeah, both depending on the situation. 100% middle two as well, Kirsty. Good, yeah, it's really hard, isn't it, to just stay in one or the other. Definitely try to do both. Sometimes it's hard not to adopt an I know best attitude. If you've been here for a long time, but I definitely don't know the best all the time. Yeah, that's it. You can very much situate yourself in that kind of control, like you said, Alex, and find that actually you think you know best because you've been here for so long and worked for it. But utilize what people think. They're coming in with fresh eyes. They're coming in with fresh ideas. It's always good to kind of find out, how did you do it in your business? What do you think would work well? What do you think won't work well? Great. Okay, cool. It seems like we're all kind of aligned with this. So Jodie says the same. She's in both. So yeah, kind of in the middle of it. Okay, so when you have someone that you want to develop in your team, there's kind of 4 buckets that it falls into. So anytime anyone comes with some kind of training request, we have to identify what is it they actually need and what's the best format for us to give it in. So there's 4 kind of boxes, like I said, and you just need to pick one, maybe a combination of a few as well you might do. But the one we're going to focus on today is coaching, which is there in pink. But it can be a training issue. So it could be about, right, we need to actually give them the understanding, the knowledge. They actually need to learn how to do something. They've never had that given to them about this topic. So it's a training issue. Perhaps there's also retraining issues that happen. So they've had the training, they've forgotten it, they've gone into bad ways. We need to retrain them on the best processes and the best way to do it. Or you have something that's a mentoring issue. So mentors are different to coaches. And I want to kind of really stress this because sometimes these are kind of assumed to be the same thing and they're not. So a mentor is someone who is an expert in what they do. So you are mentored by someone who has done that job or has done that role or worked in that industry, and they're an expert in that field or that skill set. Maybe it might not even be a job role. It might be just they're an expert in that skill set that you want to learn, and you go to them and they teach you what they do. So that's very much about telling you how to do it. And that's a mentor, that's the difference. So they'll share their skills and their insights on how to do it, and that's mentoring. Coaching is the complete opposite to that. So coaching is non-directional. It doesn't tell you what to do. It asks you questions. It kind of probes you and provokes you into a certain thought process that allows you to make the decisions as an individual. So it's not about telling you what to do. It's about directing you to the right way. And for that reason, it doesn't need to be an expert in the field. So coaches are very skilled, don't get me wrong, and they're very good at what they do because they have that ability to kind of pull people into the way that they need to go and the ways they need to be working through their questioning techniques, through their ability to kind of identify what the person's trying to say, but allowing that person to make their actual decision. So that's the difference between both. And as I say, sometimes it's quite often merged as to one thing, that it is mentor or coaching and they're the same thing, but they're not, they're completely different. And then you have the counselling side of stuff. So quite easily coaching turns into counselling sessions where you're just listening to people's problems quite unbiasedly, but not really giving them any direction, not allowing them to come to a decision. They're just really talking through what it is they want to talk through. And again, we have to be careful of that piece sometimes as well. And sometimes it's needed, don't get me wrong, but we want to kind of try to avoid that typically. So today's focus is all around the coaching aspect of things. And there's 7 coaching skills, which an author called Michael Simpson, he kind of advocates on this, and it's used by Franklin Covey. So for those of you that don't know Franklin Covey is Stephen Covey is the person that wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. quite a big phenomenon, but Franklin Covey is his company. He's actually passed away now, but his company lives on, and they do widespread training and coaching, and they go through kind of all the things for personal development and for personal improvement as well. They do some great courses and great resources and things. But they published a book, and they talk about unlocking potential actually in it, which is where the title for this session came from. And they say there's 7 key coaching skills that you need as a leader in order to move people from that good to that great bucket. So the first one you want to look at is building trust. You need to have trust before anything else with your team. If you don't, they're going to suspect you, and they're going to reject you as a coach in effect. So anytime that you decide that you want to have a coaching conversation with them or try and help them develop to be a better self, they're actually going to reject that notion. They're not going to actually take any kind of action from what you're discussing. You're likely to find they're disengaged. They don't come to you when they want to find this stuff out or when they want a bit of help and guidance. It's really important that you build trust, and you do that by listening to them, by being credible, delivering on the things that you say you're going to deliver on, being honest and open as well about the things that you can't, and keeping their confidence in the stuff that they discuss. When I think they're struggling with, it shouldn't be shared with your team. It should be very confidential for them, and for them to feel actually it's just a conversation between me and my manager that doesn't need to go any further to the wider team. So that's the first one. Second one you need to do is challenge your paradigms. So paradigms are the ways in which we think. And we have to choose, we have to, as managers, we have to help people challenge the way they think. And that's the way that you're going to kind of draw out that best part of them, that you're going to take them from that good to great, like we said. So you need to challenge how they're looking at things. Play devil's advocate. Say you're playing devil's advocate when they present something to you. Challenge what they've said. Go complete opposite view, even if it's not what you believe. It allows them to think in a different way. Talk about the risk factors. I always find that's a good way to do it. So right, okay, if we do that, the risk that we face is X. How would you mitigate that? That's a great coaching question for them. It's a great way for them to start to think of it in a different mindset. And we talked about, I think a few weeks ago, I referred to Albert Einstein as a good example of this. His theory of relativity, he wouldn't have just come up on that on his own. He did it by speaking to people, by speaking to his advisors, to his colleagues, to other scientists, all to challenge him and for him to really kind of make sure he had the right theory that he put in place there. So it's really important we do that in everything that we do. I know Einstein's a kind of really over the top example, but I just want to kind of put it into perspective for you guys, that we should always be challenging, whether to our teams or them challenging us as well. It helps us develop as well. Seek strategic clarity. So what I mean by that is the goals that they choose to work on should be really clear with an endpoint, okay? And I stress that having an endpoint, it's all very well saying, I want to do X, I want to be a CEO of a company, okay, but by when? Because otherwise you could be working towards that your whole life, which means it might become unachievable. It means that you have no kind of sense of urgency, you have no actions in order to get there. So it's really important that we think about that as well and make sure that they're very clear on what they're actually trying to achieve. And you can do that by drawing that out of them. And I'm going to go through a popular coaching framework in a moment that might help you with those conversations. Execute it flawlessly. So what we mean by that is help them set their goals for a start. So identify what it is they're trying to work towards. Help them prioritize it as well. As their line manager, you know what's a priority for the business and what's not. You know what helps them align to that as well. So really kind of help them with that as well, and speak about why those things are a priority and why other things aren't. Because again, that helps them with future ones, so that they understand your thought process behind that. They understand the way that you work with that, but they also then can start to do that themselves as they go forward and have new goals and new priorities. And hold them accountable. That's a really big one. We talked about habits a few weeks ago on the Mind Couch series, and we said actually having someone that holds you accountable for things is super helpful when you're trying to achieve a goal, because they're the ones that keep you going. They're the ones that you're kind of doing it for, and you feel bad if you don't meet a deadline or you don't do an action that you're supposed to do. You feel bad about it. So again, holding your team accountable for it, right? So you set yourself a goal of X and you said you wanted to complete that by today. How did you get on with that? Did it work? Is there anything else you need to do? What would you look to do differently next time? So holding them accountable for that and having that conversation, just reaching out, simple questions, it helps them feel that they need to deliver on it as well. So they go ahead and action what their goals are, which is good. Give effective feedback. I say effective feedback. Don't just give feedback for the sake of giving feedback. But your feedback should be about creating awareness. It should be focused on actions. So bring awareness to what they've done or what they haven't done. Focus on the actions that they need to do or that they have done, and the results that they wanted to achieve. Okay, so talk about that. Right, so you set yourself a goal of X and you said you wanted that done by today. You've only achieved half of it. So what stopped you from getting the full way to your goal? What would you do differently next time? Do you think there's anything within your power that you could change or you could have done better? And that allows them to kind of self-recognize with that. And then you can say, right, yes, I observed that. I think next time, perhaps instead of spending so much time in this area, you should have focused a bit more on this area, and this might help you in your future goals. Tap into talent as well. So people underestimate the talents, their own talents. So a lot of the time you might find you're with someone that you line manage who doesn't realize their potential or doesn't even realize what they're good at and what they're not good at. So help them understand that and make those observations and discuss it with them. It doesn't have to be like a horribly awkward conversation. It can be like, actually, I've noticed that you're excellent in this area, and I think this is a real strength for you. But I think if you had this piece as well where you're a little bit weak, but I think we can get you back up, I think that would really complement that skill set that you have. Let's work on that area and see how we can develop you there and see if that makes the other thing easier or whatever. So you can see there that conversation, it doesn't make you feel bad. You can see that actually it's a really nice way to approach a situation. And then the final thing is move the middle, which sounds really weird, but it's a lot of the time as line managers, we have our team and they're all good because that's why we've hired them. We've wanted them to do the job. They're all good at what they do. But actually what we find is you kind of get these top performers, which you then end up focusing your time on. And you focus on the low performers, but not in the middle piece, okay? And that's not good because they're the people that are good at what they do, but they're not yet great, like I've said. So they're the people who are, you're happy just leaving them because you know they can do it, but actually we could take them on to be top performers as well. So we need to work out how to do that, and that's important. So don't forget your middle. Have a look at your team. You've got low performers, you've got high performers, but don't forget the middle and make sure you're moving them up as well. So that's really the pieces around the coaching skills that you should have. The last bit, like I said, is just a little bit of a framework that you can use. And I'm going to follow up with the handout that we have on this. But there's a really popular coaching model that people use just to drive conversation. It works in some situations, it doesn't in others. So just use it where appropriate. But I think it's a good place for you to start if you're new to coaching as a line manager. And it's called the GROW model. It's penned by a guy called Sir John Whitmore. He does a lot about performance coaching. He does executive coaching. Really recommend any of his literature. He writes some really fantastic books on this and how to really dissect it. But what I've done here is just put one question in each just to give you an idea of the conversation that you can have with your employees. But it starts with goals. The G stands for goals. So your questioning at this point is, okay, so tell me, what would you like to work on? What would you like us to focus on at the moment for you? How did you get to decide that was your goal? Why do you think that goal is better over something else that we've talked about in the past? You know, there's questions on the goal that they're actually trying to achieve. And remember we said at the beginning, make it very clear what the strategic clarity is. You want to find out exactly what it is they want to focus on and by when. Then talk about the reality. So you've questioned that bit, then you go into the reality of it. Okay, so where are you today in relation to that goal? Why do you think you're in that place? What is it you think that actually is lacking, which is the reason you set that goal? So the reality of the situation, what tools do you have available to you? And that starts to go into the options section. So O stands for options. What options do you have in order to achieve your goal? What tools could you utilize? What resources do you have available to achieve that goal? How long do you think it will take you to implement that? Does that fit in with the timescale that you've put in place? And then the last one is, I call it way forward. Some people use way forward, some people use will. But what action are you going to take and by when? So this is the piece where you kind of make it actionable and you make it time bound. So what action are you going to take and by when are you going to take that action? Do you need anything in order to get there? What will it feel like when you get to that point where you've achieved it? Is that enough of a stretching goal for you? Do you think we need to go a bit further with that? And by going through that framework of keeping goals, reality, options, and way forwards in your mind as you're having these conversations, you'll find that by the end of that session or by the end of that conversation, you're actually in a place where you've got a really clear-cut goal. They know how they're going to action it and they know what they're going to do. Your job then is, once you get more confident with that, is actually stripping those back and actually working out, right, Is that goal achievable for them? Are they going to be able to achieve it? And do I need to challenge them a bit more to say, actually strip that piece out, or not actually tell them, like I said, but question them to that point where they realize, actually, I can't quite do that, because the reality of it is I don't have the resources to do that. So what else can I influence, and how do I do that? So that's pretty much it in terms of what I wanted to talk to you about today. As I say, we're going to have a chat with Laura and Ashley, and they're going to take us through some of their bits that they've experienced in their roles and they've done with coaching. I realised I hadn't actually shared the screen the second time, so apologies guys. I'll follow up with the slides afterwards. I'll just talk to you then, but I've put all this into slides as well so you can reference. But on that note, I'm going to ask if Ashley, if you could come back on and take the first question for me. So Ashley, obviously you've done coaching for a while, you also have team leaders and things, but at what point in your kind of management career did you decide, or did you start implementing coaching? And how would you describe the type of coaching that you do with your teams?
So I think from me, I started it pretty much straight away. Whenever I've got someone new in my team, I think it's quite beneficial for the person to know what the expectation is from me, like to them for their coaching. So as soon as they come over, I always like to make like the first sessions quite informal. I quite like to get to know them, how they like to be coached, what they don't like, because what I don't like to do is make that person feel like, oh, this is just going to be a telling off, you've done this wrong, you've done that wrong. So I think my style of coaching is quite laid back. I like it to be more of a conversation. I don't like it to be a telling off. I like us to be able to have an open conversation so I can find out where they need the help, where I can coach them. I want them to be comfortable enough to tell me why stuff has maybe gone wrong. And then on the flip side, I like them to be able to sit there and go, actually, I did this really well. I absolutely smashed this. So yes, it's quite a laid back approach, but quite encouraging. I feel like that time for that coaching is that time that you get with that agent, that person, and you should both leave that session feeling, I got a lot out of this.
That makes sense, yeah. And do you find that you kind of differentiate then? Like, do you make it clear, this is when I'm line manager and this is when I'm like coaching you? Do you differentiate those sessions, or not really? Does that come naturally?
So in my coaching sessions, I like to document everything, so that should there come a time where I have to flip to like manager Ashley, it's very easy, because it's expected. Because they can obviously see the progress themselves. But it's very easy to flick from I'm coaching you to now this is an issue which I need to address as your manager.
Yeah, okay, cool, brilliant. All right, so same question over to you, Tom. So at what point did you decide, or did you start implementing coaching, and how would you describe the type of coaching that you do with your team?
For me, it was straight away. Luckily, I did sort of have a coaching background prior to the management role itself. But I guess at the same time, I understood the importance of coaching and what it meant for the performance of customer services as well. When I have been doing my coaching, I think one of the main things is creating that environment. So being able to have an agent or somebody from your team there and make it that bit more comfortable. So it opens up to them, having maybe an in-depth discussion, talking about things they probably don't think about day to day. But normally it would just be a one-to-one face-to-face session that I would do. Obviously with lockdown, it has been video calls, so you still have that face-to-face interaction, which I think is really important as well. But in the sessions, I also use the models of GROW and SMART. I think it's really important for the agent to understand their goal and how they can achieve it. I'd say my style is probably trying to lead them to the answers themselves. So going away from the manager side, it's more about coaching them, making them realise what they need to do in terms of having the autonomy and providing that best performance as well. But the sessions can cover anything. So it could be a specific call, it could be work they've carried out previously, or it could just even be, I guess, their attitude in general towards their particular role.
Okay, good. And do you decide, Tom, like, do you let them choose what you're going to talk about in your coaching sessions with them, or do you normally have kind of an agenda with that? How do you approach it?
I think normally it would be an agenda that's already set previously. Mm-hmm. So I think the agents are aware of what the coaching sessions are like. They know that it's expected. And it'll be down to myself who chooses what we do the coaching on, specifically in their sessions.
Yeah. Okay, all right, brilliant, thank you. Okay, so moving on to you, Laura, I'm actually going to put a different question to you. So can you tell us a situation that you've had where you've kind of seen the positive outputs of coaching and the positive impact of someone that you've worked with?
Yeah, there's quite a few examples, quite fortunately. So with my team, we've got quite a large team of working on admin roles, and it's a lot of like very in-depth processes coming straight out of training, which a lot of my agents have recently. Those can obviously be quite daunting, jumping straight in and kind of working onto them. So from the start, I always establish that relationship with my agents of it'll always start out almost like a counselling thing. So I will get to know them. I'll get to know their experiences in the past. I'll get to know what their experience is with businesses like ours, but also very different, and kind of what they enjoy in day-to-day life as well. So a lot of my agents in the past have been very IT, so they do enjoy kind of those processes and getting very in depth with a lot of things. So then when moving on to like the mentoring and then on to coaching, it makes it very easy. I think when we very first started out with the admin team and working on those processes, it was very much a change of tactic for a lot of them, where they'd been kind of having to multitask and multi-skill themselves there. But I think the definite benefit of coaching was kind of re-centralising that and refocusing themselves. One benefit I've always seen from coaching as well is very much time management, especially with my admin team, because obviously you've got to be able to self-manage and time manage a lot more when it comes to responding to emails, but also keeping up to date with where you've 20 customers that you're all dealing with are all at in this certain process. So time management comes a lot into that as well, which is where I've definitely seen a big improvement in coaching, through coaching.
Brilliant. Okay, you make two really excellent points there. The first one around the fact that you started with mentoring and then moved into coaching. I think sometimes there is a time to do that, because like we discussed at the beginning, it's the expert part, isn't it, that you need to embed that kind of knowledge and that skill set, and then you move into coaching where it's all about performance increasing. So I really like that. And then your second part there around the fact that you've got to really kind of look at what their skill sets are with the admin team and work out what's best for them as well, which is good. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. In terms of Ashley, in terms of we've talked there about positive impact training, but also in hindsight we can always say there's things that we could have done better, or we should have used coaching for. Is there any situation or a time, Ashley, where you didn't coach someone and actually you think in hindsight that would have been a better solution for them and would have helped them?
Yeah, 100%. I'd be lying if I sat here and said that some coaching sessions have not gone to plan. I think with me, if I've had a coaching session with somebody, I like to go away and kind of coach myself, because I have had agents where they've come in and it has been tough. Like, they sit there and you ask them questions and they're literally one-word answers. And it's been too easy just to give in. But I am quite a stubborn person, so I won't let them not be coached. So what I do is I go away and I'm like, no, I'm not giving in. I've done it this way, right? How can I do it another way? So luckily I've never had an experience where I've not given somebody the chance. It's maybe just taken me a little bit longer and a little bit more of effort, but it has, touch wood, always paid off in the end.
Yeah, I think that's right though. If you just have to put the time into it, don't you, and to recognize what they need. Okay, so I'm going to go to Tom on this one, but actually, Tom, I'm going to throw you a new question. So this one is from Sandra. She's written in part of the audience Q&A. So Tom, how do you manage underperformance after coaching goals have not been met?
One of the things I've done in the past is I've created like a performance plan. I think any coaching session that you have, it's imperative that you have like a follow-up or an action plan for afterwards. Say if they are underperforming, And then by creating the performance plan, it gives you the opportunity to actually work in a lot more depth with the agent specifically. You're then able to concrete, I guess, timeframes and different pieces of work, and you can focus on that maybe specific part of what they need to be doing in a lot more detail and spend more time on it with them. So for me, it's just really the follow-up, and for yourself just to manage that, stay on top of the follow-up sessions and to follow through with the performance plan.
Great. Yeah, I think you're right. It's good to kind of be very clear on what the goals are, isn't it? And what you expect from them, and then have that. So Laura, do you have anything to add to that question? So how do they manage underperformance after coaching goals have not been met?
So I think past that point of the performance improvement plan and having follow-up sessions with coaching, I think there comes a time as a manager where you do have to ask yourself, is it will or skill with this agent? So is it a case of actually they don't have that skill set there to be able to meet those coaching targets, or actually do they just not have the will? Are they not feeling those coaching targets? Do they not want to be here almost, which is sometimes very hard question to ask yourself when you've kind of invested that time with someone. And if that kind of follow through hasn't happened, like Ashley said earlier, it's sometimes a case of switching into the manager role rather than the coaching role and saying, right, we've not met these targets, why? And questioning around that, and going from there, really.
Yeah, the will and skill model is a brilliant way to look at it. It really helps you identify. You can actually, I'll share the framework afterwards if people are interested, but you can actually use that quadrant to decide whether it's training, coaching, mentoring, or counselling as well. It really helps you to do that. Okay, good. So Ashley, just coming back to you then, you've talked there about the fact that you use the GROW model and you've used that in the past, but how about with your team leaders? So you manage team leaders and managers as well. How does your coaching conversations differ between someone who's just an employee and not actually at a management level?
I think when I've coached agents, it's very structured. It's very, this is the time we're doing the coaching, this is what we're doing, and it normally follows the same format. I tend to find when it comes to my team leaders, as bad as this sound, it is a little bit more chaotic, only because if I see an opportunity that I can do to coach them, I will take it. I'm not going to wait until 2 days when I've booked some time in to do it. I will there and then on the spot, right, let's do some coaching. So like if they've got their own coaching session, one-to-ones, even if we have like a random ad hoc meeting with the team, I like to be involved in them, and I like to help them deliver, because obviously their goal is going to be a lot different to an agent goal. So especially with my team leaders, like I said, just whenever I can get the chance to do it. So sometimes they might have little coaching sessions with me 10 times a week, and then the week after we have quite a nice quiet week, so it's just like a normal session again. But it's just taking that opportunity, because obviously they're not doing like firm work, ticket work, they're managing people. Obviously, as a people manager, I know myself, anything can happen at any time of the day. So yeah, just like I said, just taking that opportunity and trying to get it in there and then with them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think I find that as well. Like, I don't always just book out a coaching session. I tend to do, I'll ask questions that challenge. So you can ask things like, right, what would you do differently next time? How do you think that went? Do you think there's anything we can improve? Like, just those open-ended questions when they start to really open up about it and bring awareness, like we said, bring awareness to it. Thank you, Ashley. Okay, so Tom, on that note, and on the fact of kind of just that sporadic kind of time when you need to speak to people, the good thing to have is like a bank of questions that you know are quite good for challenging people and for bringing that out. So can you give us any examples of some great coaching questions that you can use to bring out the best of your team that you can share with the people listening today?
Definitely, and I think the questions I have are probably more specific to making sure the agent understands the customer, because a lot of the work that we do is in contact with the customers. So one of the best questions I tend to use is, what would you do differently if you could do this again? And this could be the question after they've maybe listened to the call or had time to reflect on their performance, in a sense. Another question that I would also put out to them would be, how would you feel as the customer? So chances are, it might not have been the best experience, or there could have maybe been a bit more empathy on that specific call. So if you put the agent themselves into the customer's shoes, it gives them that real sense of understanding, maybe what's right and what could have been done differently.
I really like that one as well, because I think that's really that customer first mentality as well. If we all start to kind of question our teams on that, we start to really think about the customer, don't we? Okay, good. Good. All right, Laura, do you have any questions that you could add to that? Is there anything different that you would encourage people to use as coaching questions if they just want to start doing this?
I think one of the main ones I've kind of used when speaking to agents mainly has kind of been at the end of kind of building that grow model, kind of asking them how do you feel about these targets? How do you feel about where we'll want to be in a week's time, in 2 weeks' time? Because I think that always gives a really good insight as to actually do they want to achieve those goals as well? And is it just a case of kind of, sometimes it's self-reflecting as well. So have I just taken control of this coaching session and almost mentored them and told them what they need to do rather than them building it themselves? So it kind of gets their investment in it as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And sticking with you, Laura, obviously we had a chat on Friday about people being uncoachable. And there comes a point where you just can't coach someone. So how do you handle that? And if there isn't anyone that you've had that's been uncoachable, why do you think that is?
So I don't think anybody's uncoachable. I've had it in the past where I have thought that, and I have thought to myself, I've walked away from a coach session thinking that was absolutely awful. But I always self-reflect on stuff like that and think, why have I walked away like that? Because I think sometimes it is just a case of actually they've not got that trust in me yet to want to have that open coaching session, and they have sat there and answered questions like just saying yes or no, rather than actually giving an open answer or wanting to improve. So I think it has always been that case. So then when I have walked away in that, like, I've gone in with a different tactic next time, and rather than opening the conversation as a coaching conversation, almost starting it as a kind of, oh, how was your weekend, and build, kind of starting again with them. The other aspect of it is, again, I keep going back to it, but when that has happened in the past and I have had continuous coaching sessions with people that don't want to be coached, it's very much turned into a will thing. They don't want to be here. They don't want to be part of a growing business and have that challenge put in place on them, which that is when they have turned out to be uncoachable, but not because they are uncoachable people, more because they don't have the will to be coached and they need and they want to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ashley, do you have anything to add to that point as well?
I think just the same as like what Laura said. I think getting down to that nitty gritty with somebody and finding out exactly where their mindset is, it is tough. And when I am coaching those types of people, and to say in the past when it has been, like, say, not a very good call, I do like to flip it around and like get into those questions of, if you were in that position, like, how would you feel, etc. Like, and really try to make them understand if they might not see anything wrong in what they're doing, but when you question them and then you say to them, okay, let's maybe do like a little role play, you be the customer and I'll be what you did. And it does get to a point that they do kind of think, yeah, actually, am I right for this role? Am I right to be a customer facing person, or can I turn this around? And it does work out for the best when they get to that point, because you can be like, well, we either carry on coaching or we don't.
I actually think you make an excellent point there. Like, by doing that role reversal and by bringing that self-awareness to them about their strengths and weaknesses, it does make that conversation easier if you think actually they're not coachable and they're not performing well in this role. And it's no shocker for them if you have to make that kind of tough decision with that person, and it might be that they come to that realization that actually it's not the role for them and they need to move on. So yeah, I think that's a really positive thing, if anything, actually. Okay, so Tom, just coming over to you. Obviously, you've talked there about you've got quite a lot of experience with coaching and you did that prior to being a team leader. And how do you strike that right balance between being the line manager and then having coaching conversations with them? Because they are two very different things. And being a line manager, there are some things that you have to enforce. So how do you strike that right balance?
I think that you should always go in as the coach initially, because it gives them that time to sort of gain your trust, get to know you more, and you get to know them more as well. I guess you know yourself what style's going to be right in what situation, as everyone's really different and they take to coaching a lot differently. I think in terms of becoming the manager in these scenarios, it sort of links in with what we spoke about with Laura and Ashley. It's down to the behaviours. And I guess when you get into the situation where an agent's maybe not cooperating in the session, you kind of have to stamp your authority and say, you know, look, we are trying to achieve a goal here, and explain the reasons why the session is in place to try and get them back on board with the coaching side of things. So yeah, my main tip would be just to go in as the coach, and then you can sort of gauge when you need to be the manager in the session as and when.
Yeah, I think that's nice advice actually, to just start with that and set an expectation that way. And then, yeah, as you say, when you need to move over to the performance side, you can. Okay, Laura, so coming over to you, if someone listening's never had a coaching conversation with a team member before, or this is kind of a new concept to them, where would you advise they start? How did you kind of get your confidence with it and know how to structure it and what to do?
I think the main place to start for me was always, when I very first started, was the GROW model. And I know we all keep referring back to it, but it is a really useful model, and you can almost use that model in front of your agents as well, which is always really good. I've used it in the past when I very first started using it with some of my agents and said, like, let's give this a go together. Like, let's go through the GROW model and think, actually, are we having effective coaching sessions together? So I think, and agents always appreciate that as well, because they can see then what's going on in your mind, which I think agents always enjoy. The other thing I'd say as well is, after you've done a couple, and if you are starting to feel that little bit more comfortable with it, but you're not 100% on if you're asking the right questions or doing the right thing, reach out to Sheila in the team. I think one of the best things I ever had was a 360 coaching session where I had someone sitting on it while I was coaching an agent, and they gave me feedback afterwards, and it really helped me kind of identify and self-reflect myself and coach the coach on where actually I was going wrong, or where I could ask some more open questions and get a bit more out of them.
Brilliant. That's really good to know. Thank you for that. And I think you're right. It's good to get other people's opinions as well, and to get them to do it. I know it's really nerve-wracking as well the first time you do it, but just asking someone, like you said, to observe it and give some constructive feedback can really help. Okay, Ashley, same question for you. So if someone's new to coaching, where would you recommend they start?
Like I said, the exact same. There's so many models available, like on the internet, on the academy. There's like so much resource out there. I think the best thing I did was link in with our quality manager in the whole office, because when I stepped up to be a team leader, I'd been an agent for 2 years, so I'd kind of been the other side, so I'd been coached, but I kind of didn't know how I wanted to be a coach. So what I did was I sat in some sessions, I sat in with coaches and with the other managers, and I kind of just made notes and kind of thought, yeah, I quite like your approach to it. And then when I did become a team leader and I was coaching my own team, and my line manager at the time, she actually sat in my session, and it was really nerve-wracking, but at the end of it, it was really nice to have that feedback, so I can see where I was going right and where I was going wrong and where I could improve. And like areas that I wasn't so good at, and it allowed me then to go away and teach myself and then put it into practice. And one of the other things I did, which is a bit controversial, is actually ask my team. So when we've had a coaching session, maybe like the next day or something, ask them how they felt. Like, did they take anything away from it? Was there something missing that I could have given them more? I think the more feedback you get in those coaching sessions, the better you become at coaching your team.
Great, thank you. And same question over to you, Tom.
It's probably going to be quite a similar answer. But mine would probably be to start on the internet, as there's so much content. You can even watch videos of coaching as well, which gives you a really good insight as to how coaching sessions might want to start or they might to go through. And I think within the business, there's so many people carrying out coaching every single day. So like Ashley said, you can be a part of a group and join in on a coaching session. If you want to understand how they work, then you can just sit and observe, take notes, and then you could get the feedback from the person who's doing the coaching, ask them a few questions about it. And I think having that experience there in the moment, you can sort of see and understand how a coaching session is carried out and how it can change in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're right. There's plenty of resources on it. Coaching is such a big phenomenon now, and there's so many different resources online from the Coaching Federation, etc., that you can actually get some insights into how to do it. And yeah, and like Tom said, some videos on there. It's really good to kind of watch how people do it. I'm quite a visual learner as well, and I like doing that. So I think that's really helpful. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of the session. I think we've kind of covered it already around resources, but I'm just going to share my screen with a couple of resources that I recommend if you do want to get started by having these conversations. And while I'm doing that, please do, if you've got any questions for any of the panel, just pop them into the box. We've got a bit of time so I can take some questions. But there's kind of 3 resources that I really recommend if you want to get started. Sir John Whitmore, like I said earlier, is someone who kind of penned the Grow model and started that whole piece. He was actually a sports performance coach, so he derived everything from that, and he does a really great TED talk or TEDx talk on, you can get it on YouTube, but it's called Cleverly Connected, and he talks through his model and how he does that. The one that inspired this session, Unlocking Potential, like I said, it's from Franklin Covey Company, and it's an author called Michael Simpson. He talks about unlocking potential, and he looks at those 7 coaching skills that we went through earlier and how to utilize those within the business. Just obviously goes into more depth, but it talks about individuals, teams, and the organization. So it looks at 3 different levels as well. So depending where you are, if you're a team leader, if you're a department head, you can use that resource. And then finally, there's a good course that's recommended on LinkedIn Learning called Coaching Skills for Leaders and Managers. So again, it kind of shows, it uses videos, it uses examples. So it's only 32 minutes. It's not long at all. You can download it offline, but it has some great insights on there on how you can get started with that conversation. Good. Okay, so that brings me up to the end of this part. So before I go through the final bits, let's just see if there's any questions for the team. Oh, here we go. Laura's actually made a recommendation. So I find the little book of big management theories really useful as well when wanting to refer to different models in leadership coaching that she's using at the moment. So Laura, if you'd like to just share that link with me, I can share that out with everyone on the Slack group as well, so we can share that insights. But is there any questions from anyone? Anything anyone wants to ask? Ways to do stuff, questions to ask, anything like that? Please, by all means, pop them in the Q&A or the chat box for us. Just give it a minute or so. I think what the guys have gone through today has been super helpful, so thank you for that. I don't know if there is any questions coming through. Nothing in the Q&A yet. Okay, guys, I don't think there is any questions. So on that note, then we'll start to end the session there. Thank you to Laura, Ashley, and Tom. If you just want to bring yourselves back up on the screen for me. Special thank you to you all. You've all shared some really great insights today. I've taken a lot away from it. I hope everyone else has too. If you guys have any questions for these guys, use the Leadership Lounge Slack channel. That's what it's there for. So if you think of anything, you want to just ask what questions to use or whatever, it's an open network. It's not just for Chloe and I to post into, it's for everyone to utilize and share knowledge with. I'll send out the slides because I do realize I didn't have the slides up when I was talking, so apologies for that. It's been one hell of a Monday already, but I will add those onto the Slack group as well, so you can have a look at those things that I talked about. But yeah, next week's session, same time, 11:30 on Monday, and it's about emotional intelligence and how to lead with emotional intelligence. But thank you, Ashley, Tom, and Laura, for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.